This is Sara Sach with Posh Pooch Designs, and today's video I'm going to show you how to make my loopy flower. It's really a lot of fun. It's just made with a whole bunch of loops. If you can do a single crochet, a slip stitch, and a chain, you can do this flower because it's super easy, and just by adding more rows you can make it bigger. This is a free pattern on my blog. It's just called the Loopy Flower Crochet Pattern. And on the blog I have the basic pattern. It measures about 3.5 inches. But you can make it even bigger if you want to, just by adding more rows. And of course I'll show you how to do that when we get to that portion of the video. For today's demonstration, I'm going to be using a worsted weight number 4 yarn, and that is what the pattern calls for. This is Red Heart Super Saver, just in a light blue, and you can make it out of any worsted weight number 4 yarn that you want to. I chose to do these in solids to go with some of my items that I have, and the neat thing about this flower, you can put it on a hat, a scarf, a vest. You can put it on a headband, a poncho, a bag. You can even put it on a dog sweater or make a whole bunch of them, hook them together. It's just a super easy, super fun, and lovely pattern. We're going to be stitching today with our H hook 5mm. You're also going to need a needle for weaving in those ends and tying off at the end, and of course a pair of scissors to cut off those yarns. And that's all you need. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to do is make a slip knot. Put our hook in that loop and chain 4. We're going to take the tail of that yarn, not the piece we're using, but the tail, wrap it over our hook and draw that through that loop and snug that down to make a little loop. And then we'll tie a little knot just to hold that in place. Now make sure you've left yourself a little hole because we're going to be stitching 10 single crochets in this little hole. All right, now what I want you to do is turn your chain loop so that your string is on this side, because we're going to stitch over that string. And here's your working yarn. Hold that in with your finger. Take your hook and stick it right in that hole. Draw up a loop and just do a little chain 1. And that gets us to the top side of where we're going to work. Now we're going to be stitching 10 single crochets in this hole. And make sure you stitch over that tail, because that'll help you draw that hole closed when we're all finished. All right, to stitch a single crochet, we're going to go in the hole. We're going to pull the loop through. You'll have those 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and go through both of those. So there's 1 single crochet. And this is going to be tight, because we need to get 10 single crochets in this little hole. So I've got about 5 stitched there. I'm going to push those down around so they're all bunched up together. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've only got 4. I thought I stitched 5. Alrighty, here's 6. 7, 8. All right, I'm going to count again just to make sure. And the way that you count is by counting the little braids on the top. So here's, there's my chain 1, so we're going to go the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, my tail's getting caught in there. We don't want that. 9 and 10. Now we're not going to join to that chain 1, we're going to join to the first single crochet. And we do that by sticking our hook through those loops, yarn over and pull a loop through. And then we're going to pull that loop through the loop that's already on our hook. And then we're going to go ahead and chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. All right. And this is how it should look at this point. This next row, we're going to be chaining 10 and slip stitching in the front loops only. And what that means, let me get this up close to you. On the top of our stitches, we have these little braids. The front loop is the loop that's closest to you. The back loop is the loop that is away from you. And we're only going to be stitching our slip stitches when we chain in those front loops, because then we're going to come back around and stitch in those back loops. All right, so we've already chained 10. We'll put our hook through, and then we're only going to go through the next front loop. See, I'm only going through that front loop. Yarn over, pull that through, and then pull that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And then we're going to chain 10 again. Okay, then we're going to go to the next stitch, and we're only going to stitch a slip stitch in that front loop. Whoops. There we go. And this is how this row is done. We chain 10 and we slip stitch in the next stitch, only stitching in the front loop. You'll get loops like this, only stitching in the front loop, and then you'll see in the back you're leaving this ridge all the way around. That's the back loop. And you'll have 10 loops because we had 10 single crochets. So we're going to continue this around, chain 10, and then slip stitch in the front loop of the next stitch all the way around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Get back in there. Okay, one more. All right, so one more time I'll show you. We're going to only stitch our slip stitch in the front loop. Like that. We'll do this all the way around till we reach that last single crochet. And you'll have 10 loops. I did my 10 chain 10 flower petals with a slip stitch in between. Here's where I slip stitched my last stitch. And this is what the front looks like. And this is what the back looks like. I'm going to go ahead and take my hook and pull that little extra string to the front. And that's just to get it out of the way for right now. We'll weave that in a little bit later. So the way we do this next row is we have to stitch in these back loops that we didn't stitch in. So what I do is I just bend all the petals forward. And this helps me see where my stitches need to go. And here's my loop where I finished. So I'm going to go ahead and put my hook in there. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be stitching a single crochet in the first stitch and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch of each of these back loops that we didn't stitch in. So let's go ahead and stitch in this first one a single crochet. All right, and now we're going to go in the next back loop stitch and stitch 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. Then we'll stitch 1 in the next one, and then we'll stitch 2, 1 and 2. And this will give us a nice edge to stitch our next row of loopy petals. 1 and 1, 2. And by pushing all our petals forward, it makes it really easy to see where those back loop stitches, where there are, so we know where to put our stitches. There's 2 single crochets, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, and 1 single crochet. So when we get back around, you can see that edge is really pronounced. We'll have no problem finding our front and back posts on that next row. So let's go ahead and slip stitch in that first single crochet and chain 10. All right, put my hook down. So you can see we have a nice edge here. And if you look on the front, it causes your petals to stand up nice and tall. And that's what we want it to do. Don't worry about this. We'll come back in, pull that to the back, and weave that in later. And so this is how it should look after this row. And then we're going to come back in and do loopy petals again. All right, I'm all ready to put my next row of loopy petals on. So I'm going to hold the petals facing me, and I'm going to be stitching in these front loops again. And that's the way each row will go, even if you want to make your flower bigger like this one. This is a nice big one. Looks like a big mum, doesn't it? I just love that. You're going to again be stitching in our front loops with that slip stitch and chain 10. Making sure to only go in that front loop. And I just push those loops on the first row back so they're out of my way, and then I can see to go in that front loop with my slip stitch. And we'll do this all the way around just like we did on the first row. Chain 10, slip stitch, chain 10, slip stitch, chain 10, slip stitch, all the way around. It's done exactly like the first row there where we put the second row where we put the petals on. It's done exactly the same. The only difference is you're going to have 15 petals instead of 10 because we did those increased stitches when we added our single crochet. And that way it gets bigger as we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Go in that first stitch, pull that loop through, and pull that loop through that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, there we go. Chain 10, slip stitch in the next single crochet. And that's the way it will work, exactly the same, like I said, as this row, only we'll have 15 petals instead of 10. And if this is the size flower that you want, which is what this size is, the 3.5 inch one, when you get back around here, we're going to tie off and weave in that in, and then I'll show you how to weave in the middle. But if you want to make your flower bigger like this one, you're going to want to repeat those last 2 steps of 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets in the back loop, and then petals again. And you'll repeat that for as big as you want it. And you can see the bigger it gets, the more loopier it gets, and the more fluffier. And I just absolutely love this. This would be perfect on a great big cowl or hat or something. And I just, like I said, this is just a really easy, fun flower to make with lots of fun possibilities. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this one up, just making the 3.5 inch size. I finished my row of petals for my loopy flower, and I tied off to the back after my last slip stitch. And I'm going to take my needle and show you how to weave in these two ends. The first one I want to show you is how to do the center circle. And we're just going to thread that yarn onto our needle. There we go. I'm going to push those petals forward again just so we can see that center. And we stitched over it, so we should be able to pull it just a little bit and close it. But if it doesn't close as tight as you like, just take your needle and go in those stitches and give it just a gentle pull. And we'll go through a few more. Just gentle pull, and then turn around and go the other direction. And that helps it stay put. So we went back, and then we're going to turn, go through a few more stitches, and go back. And that's going to help that stay put. Going back and forth is what keeps your yarn from coming out. Even if you use a needle and you only go one direction, sometimes it can still come out. Alright, so let's weave in this long one. And what I like to do is cut off enough yarn so that I have enough yarn to attach it to what I want to sew it onto, like a hat or a bandana or something, or maybe a headband. And so what I'll do is I'll just go right to the edge of those stitches and make a couple of loops. I might go one way and then go back the other. And then I just leave that because that gives me something to sew it on to what I'm going to wear it on. If I'm just going to make it into a pin so that I can use a safety pin or something to pin it onto a scarf, then I might go ahead and cut that off. But since I want to sew this onto a headband, I'm going to leave that. For instance, here's this headband that I have. I like that little pink stripe, and I think it looked pretty with that sitting right on top of it. So then I will use this piece of string or piece of yarn that I have left over and just sew that onto that headband, and then it's attached. That way I don't have to add another piece of yarn. And you can see I do that on all of them that I've made. I just leave a little piece of yarn on the back so that I can attach it. Alrighty, and that's how we make my loopy flower that you can make small or big, however you want. Just continue to repeat those last two rows until it's as large as you'd like.